The Mid-America Veterans Museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. The museum would not exist without the donations of our generous community. Your donations ensure the museum continues to share and preserve the stories of our veterans. To donate, visit mavm.org and click on Donate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. The primary purpose of the Operation Insight podcast is to educate. The views, information, or opinions expressed on the Operation Insight podcast are solely the views of the individuals or guests involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Operation Insight does not accept responsibility for their views or comments. The Operation Insight podcast may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, violence, severe mental illness, sex, drugs, and alcohol addiction. You are advised to refrain from watching or listening to the Operation Insight podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. Neither the company, host, director, or the guest shall at any time be liable for the content covered, causing offense, distress, or any other reaction. Welcome to the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum with your host, Jason Galvin, and co-host, Sergeant Ethan Gross. Welcome back, family. We are live from the Mid-America Veterans Museum with a special guest and my co-host, Sergeant Ethan Gross. Ethan, go ahead and kick us off.
A very special guest indeed, Jason. It's an honor for us to welcome, and I want to give your titles the due respect here, Herb, so bear with me here. Dr. Herb Silva. Herb was a major in the United States Marine Corps, served active duty from 1968 until 1974, achieved the rank of captain by 1974, and then went on into the reserves. That's where he achieved the rank of major. Herb, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Let's start with your early life. So, you're born in Rhode Island. Your father was an Army Reservist officer, and you used to attend his drills with him. Tell us about that.
76th Regiment, I think, artillery. He was an artillery officer in World War II and stayed, I think he made lieutenant colonel, and then he stayed involved in the reserves doing administrative stuff, as well as he was an aide to the governor and that kind of stuff. Governor later became, John Chafee later became the Secretary of the Navy, and there's a story that goes along with that. We'll get into that a little bit later. We met in Vietnam. Yeah, he was a good guy. He taught my dad God, Country, and Corps. He didn't say the Corps. God, Country, and Family.
Sure.
That was a big thing back then. It was a small town. I was the first in the family to go on to college. I went away from home. Got into it going back into the Midwest. It was new for me to leave New England and stay away from home. So my dad was, again, a good role model and service to country and family, so forth. I like to feel I carried that on.
So you attended McMurray College in Jacksonville, Illinois.
Little small school. They since closed, COVID didn't do too well with some of the. That's one of the small schools. Actually, they still do their alumni thing next week. Actually, it's. I think I'm coming up pretty soon on my 60th college reunion, which is a little bit. Little daunting type of thing, but still involved with the same female that I met in college, and she's still putting up with my crap after I think we're pushing 57 or 8 years here.
Met your wife senior year, is that right?
Yes, well, actually junior year, but
okay.
She didn't want to have anything to do with me till the senior year. That
sure.
matter of history. Let's not go there. The guy that was very influenced on me, the soccer coach, was a Marine and had 4 kids, and all of a sudden I ended up being a Marine, and I've got 4 kids. I don't know how much that had to do with it, but may he rest in peace. He was a good role model. The school was a liberal arts school. That was the early 60s. I don't know if I'd say we knew what was coming on. I knew I was going to do something with the military. I wanted to fly fast movers. The Marine Corps had the best deal at the time. They actually still do that. The Platoon Leaders Corps, I think it's called PLC.
Essentially ROTC.
Well,
That was.
yes, but no commitment while you're in school.
Okay.
And again, the hook for me was I took the aviation aptitude test or whatever it was called, and like I say, I wanted to fly fast movers, passed it. So you signed up and you went to OCS while I was a junior in college. I went the summer. Of course, I was the smiling college puke that probably did more push-ups in the mud, but I did well. I knew I was being brainwashed, and I loved it. The physical, I was in the best shape of my life. I was captain of the soccer team or whatever it was in my senior year, and getting my check marks and going forward. So that was now we're talking mid-60s.
You wanted to fly A4 specifically, is that right?
Fast movers, well, single seat aircraft. Of course, the Phantoms were a big thing coming on. There wasn't the naval, still is the naval. When I came back from Nam, I was a flight instructor in Pensacola, and we can maybe get into that a little later. But the naval pipeline, if you will, is a much longer thing than what it was. When I came back from the summer, it was a 10-week or whatever it was, 11-week thing in the summer. The guys we were with, they were going right to basic school and right to Vietnam. We went back to college for the year. I was commissioned at graduation. And then, as it turns out, I did well when I did my 10-week summer or 11-week summer, whatever the thing was. And I get offered a regular commission. And you don't know that you don't know. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Well, you get your choice of duty stations, and you get the best looking women. And so I signed the thing accepting the regular commission, and then I got my notice during Tet Offensive of '68 that congratulations, you've been accepted for your regular commission. Your aviation contract's null and void. You're in the infantry.
Oh.
So it was a little bit of a change of plans. I went to basic school. That was, at that time, aviators didn't necessarily go to the basic school. Now it's a requirement that they all do, I think, because of the lessons that we learned, having knowledge of what that grunt's putting up with type of thing. So I had orders. I was going in as a platoon commander into the Ashaw with the 9th Marines, I believe it was, and I'm getting married on my 30-day leave before we're
squeezing that in.
And as it turns out, the timing that was going on, we were losing more helicopter pilots. They said, hey, you've got aviation aptitude, so to speak. They said, you're going to flight school. I said, okay. So had to change the wedding date 2 weeks before the wedding.
Oh, my gosh. Got
married in Illinois on a Saturday afternoon and started flight school. We went to the Army. We went TAD to the Army. Huey, when we were down in Fort Walters, Texas, was the Army pipeline with their warrant officer. They were turning out Huey pilots up the Yin Yang. And so we went, 20 of us went down there in one of the early groups. We were ordered that we would do well. So we did.
Marine way.
But
for sure.
But the good news is that, heck, it was per diem. I think it was an extra $16 a day or whatever it was.
Oh, wow.
We thought we'd died and gone to heaven. That was a lot of money then.
That sounds like it.
Did your wife come down to Texas with you at that time?
She was actually 6 months behind me, graduating from undergrad.
I see.
And so, yes, she came down, and then she went back, and then she came down, and then she went back. And after she, quote unquote, finished her graduation requirements type of thing, then she came down, and then she was stuck with me, and we made the move. We went from Texas to Savannah, Georgia. Got our Army wings in Savannah, Georgia, and then we had to go back. Now we had to go back to the Marine Corps and get an instrument ticket, and we went to New River and transitioned into a Huey squadron there, and we could fly the Hueys. The folks that were coming out of the Navy pipeline had half as many hours in basic technique type of thing as the Army pilots did. We had big deal, 200 hours when there's an accident looking for a place to happen.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, Herb. I was doing a little bit of research, and when I say little, I do mean little. But Vietnam War was also commonly known as the helicopter war.
Yeah.
And in many respects, they were learning as they went when it came to helicopter warfare.
That was new.
Well, it was a different tactics too, and of course the Army was the big thing. The Army, 8 Huey Delta model Hueys, which is the one they would carry half a dozen troops in combat gear type of thing. And way early on, the Marine Corps was flying the H-34 when I checked into Nam, I had already been to the Cobra school, which was a new thing coming into Marine Corps Army. That came out in '66, I think it was, is when it started seeing combat. And we were doing our training in the middle of '69 and heading to Vietnam. But the Marine Corps was getting, I think we got 28 Cobras.
Sure.
From the Army inventory, and we had a hard time getting parts in the beginning because it wasn't in the naval inventory yet. Single G model Cobra, single engine but that, the Cobra was the thing to do. And of course, our tactics in the Marine Corps, it was just different. That's one of the things, again, from a perspective of what, you check into the group. You fly over there, you check into the wing, and the wing sends you to the group, and the group, you stand in front of the group CEO, and he says, okay, what is your training? Okay, here's what our needs are, and okay, let me see your jacket, and let's see what's going on. Well, we were a few of us that had the Cobra training in the States at the, again, Army Cobra School, and so we went down there. We could fly those things, and now it was a question that our CO, our XO, the ops officer, all our senior officers had been fast movers, and the Marine Corps was transitioning into the helicopter perspective as to why, because it served the grunts. F4 looked beautiful and made a lot of noise and dropped those big bombs and so forth, but the bad guys would get closer to the troops because that was the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
We shot within pretty close parameters to friendlies. You could walk I loved the 40 millimeter. We had an automatic grenade launcher and, of course, the minigun. Now, of course, the Marine Corps maintained they're up to the Zulu model Cobras, which, heck, that thing's got all the infrared and air to air and 30 millimeter, I think, up front. And I mean, it's a lot more sophisticated.
Guided.
We were doing some stuff with grease pencils type of thing where we wanted the stuff to go. So
the Cobra is, I need you to help me understand this. It's a tandem piloting aircraft. Help me understand what that means.
Yeah, the trick was, everybody had, Army and Marine Corps, we had Huey gunships, and you couldn't carry as much ordnance. They were slower. They were a bigger target. Take a Huey and cut it in half, and the tandem rotor, the tandem seating type of thing, if you will. Tandem rotor was the H-46. That's who we were supporting. The tandem seating, the pilot in command sat a little bit aft and up of the co-pilot gunner. We're both pilots. And again, go back to the tactics. Everything we did was in a section, was minimum of 2 aircraft. You didn't do anything single bird unless later I became a post-maintenance test pilot, and you'd go and do stuff single. You weren't supposed to. You were supposed to get too far off the base, but we'd always want to go try the gun somewhere.
The Cobra has a pretty narrow cockpit, if I understand correctly.
It's something like 42 inches wide in the cockpit type of thing. And of course, we had wing stores where we had HE 19 shot pods inboard, and most of us, our ordnance, we did a 7-shot Willie Pete on the outside. Sometimes we did flechette rounds. Sometimes we did 17-pound warheads rather than the 10-pound warheads. So, I mean, but everything that we did was all oriented towards supporting the grunts, and our job was to support the aircraft that we went with as a package. And my time, everything we did was with 2 H-46s minimum, 2 H-46s, and which our version was the H-46. The Army's version was the H-47. It's a little bit bigger target. Chinook. Chinooks are still being used.
Yeah, you're right.
H-46s have now been transitioned out. Now they're into the Vistol thing. What is it? Osprey.
Oh, the Osprey.
The Osprey 22. Yeah.
Which has had a lot of issues.
Yeah, people don't really like those that I've talked to.
All new aircraft, are dangerous. I mean, flying's a dangerous business.
Yeah, it sure is.
And not to mention you lose part. We lost, I think, 5 or 6 aircraft with we were slinging tail rotors, and I think that was something that pitch change links in the tail rotor type of thing. Which is again, I would go into the QA shop and I'd say, hey, let's go teach me how to do a better pre-flight, and let's go find a problem before we get out there. So we'd find cracks in the bearings before we'd go out there, type of thing. You do stuff in combat. You're going to put the aircraft. The regulations are for your guidance, not for your strict adherence.
Right. Well, I got a couple questions for you. I didn't catch it on all the research that I did, but As far as length of time for each mission, I know that could probably be dependent on what was going on, but what was a normal, going out? You said you needed close air support or whatever it was, and how long did it, were you flying there, doing the mission, and flying back? What did that normally take?
Yeah, all of the above. So the missions, we were up in I Corps, so we were, we had just, the squadron had just moved down from Phu, which was way up north, and that's what they were flying Hueys up there. And when we transitioned to the Cobras, we came down to Marble Mountain, and our AO, our area of operation, went from, we got up into the Ashaw. We got up close to we didn't do too much. We didn't do anything across the DMZ type of thing. But we would be up north, Phu and west, and then we'd go down from Chu Lai. And then, again, we did a lot of stuff in and around so many clicks from Vietnam. So, the missions that would come down every day, the mission would be set up, they need to be inserted. They need to be extracted. They need to be resupplied. They need medevac. We're going to be in certain recon teams. You're going to pick up recon teams that are going to shoot them up, and you got to go do that. So I worked in operations. Everybody had a collateral duty. Mine was in operations, and I ended up writing the schedule. And this was before computers, and we were doing stuff on grease boards and with grease pencils and different colored grease pencils. And here's the roster of the pilots, and you had, just observation is no disrespect, right? Some pilots were better than others, and some were tactically superior, some were better with guns. And so, again, we did everything in a section of 2 aircraft. Well, the new guys went as a co-pilot in the Dash 2 aircraft. The section leader generally was the Dash 1 aircraft, and he's the senior pilot. He could be a lieutenant. In the beginning, when we were getting newbies coming in, captains and majors, and the colonel, of course, they'd start out, but we'd put our best co-pilot with him, type of thing. And you had to be good on the maps. You had to be good on the guns. You had to be good on the tactical perspective. You had to be good on the air-to-air communication. You had to be going back and forth to the grunts, type of thing. So
sounds like a lot of on-the-job training.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
no GPS. You got to know how to navigate and read maps. And
1 to 50,000 map. You didn't have GPS type of thing, so it was a 1 to 50,000 map. And again, that's where my back when you have to do a thing with a Silva compass when you were a grunt type of thing, no relation. I could go up and read an I-Corps. You could understand where the fingers were and where the good guys were going to put their troops, and you didn't want to be doing stuff on the finger on the top of the ridge. You wanted to find in the defilade type of thing. Or your simple read is that you do a zone brief when you're going inbound for whatever it was, and you'd be talking to the grunts. You'd be keeping your transport aircraft high and dry until it was ready for them. They would come and spiral on down. We would set up what we called a 180 racetrack around whatever we were trying to do, whether it was a medevac pickup or whether it was a resupply or whatever. We had to get the transport on the ground type of thing, and to do that, we wanted the zone to be as secure as it could be. And sometimes if you're talking to that, so you're dealing with the grunts that are dealing with the PRC 20. that radio with that guy's got a target on his back type of thing, and when you hear the pop 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 in the background, or they're whispering and it's a secure zone, and you say, well, why is it so quiet, and what's that noise in the background? Or versus what you're going to be doing, you're talking to the air to air to your wingman, you're talking air to air to the aircraft that you're supporting, you're talking back to Da Nang Das type of thing, direct air support center. So there's 3 different radios that you're working on, and you're talking to your co-pilot, and you're going back and forth on the intercom. So it can be, there's a learning curve, absolutely. Sure. Now, do you practice that? Sure. Before you go over it, yeah. Now I think that they do a lot more of that than what we would do. We were learning how to fly the aircraft, and this is how you crank it up, and this is how you turn it on, and this is how you shoot it, and okay, go to war. And that's basically what happened then. And so there's a fast learning curve. And again, so there's a who became the instructors, the guys that had been there for several months, and again, you'd understand that when you've got a pucker factor mission, that there's certain people that we would identify that we'd have them color-coded on the board. that we came up with that concept. We get our missions each day from the wing who got their missions. From the group, Mag 16. We get our missions from the mag who got them from the wing type of thing, as to, hey, here's who was out in the field and here's who needed resupply. And we had a 24-hour standby medevac, and we could be, you'd go to the medevac shack at Marble, or we went to LZ Bali, which was probably 30 clicks south of where we were, and we had another medevac south standby, and that was 24 hours. And then of course your medevacs were it was either a permanent routine that meant the guy had already passed, or a routine or emergency medevac. That's the golden hour. We had to get them, and you'd go anytime, anywhere, didn't matter day or night, didn't matter what was going on.
That's when lives can be saved, essentially.
We did that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stop. I don't know how far this is into the story, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But the research that I was doing earlier, someone asked you a question, or you were posed the question of, did you ever get shot down? And you said, well, that was kind of a big question because anything could happen to the helicopter where it was unflyable, and you landed one in a rice paddy, and then you got picked back up, went back, and they sent you back out. So tell us a little bit about that. Did I get that right?
Well, the aircraft has the master caution light, the idiot light, right? That goes, ran, ran, ran. Something's wrong with the aircraft. And then you're looking at your gauges. You're looking at your head's outside the cockpit. Your ears are on the radio, and you get a sense of, you strap that aircraft on, and you can tell when something happens. So, we got shot at mostly with 30 cal. We got shot at all the time with AK type of thing. And, you go do a night medevac mission and you're getting shot at, and the bad guys said, when they get the traces coming up at you and they look like it's basketballs coming up at you, and that's we used to put them every fifth or sixth round, and they put them more than that type of thing. So, there's more lead out there. So there's not like the 46s that were sitting ducks on the ground, right? And yes, we saw 51 cal as green tracers and not red tracers. If you take a round in a vulnerable area, something happens. Well, if it goes through the tail boom and it doesn't hit anything, that's nothing. You got a hole in the aircraft. They put some duct tape on that, and you run a test top. But we took a lot of rounds in the blades and the rotor blades, and we were two blades. Now, of course, they're four-bladed aircraft, fully articulated heads type of thing. But so that was part of the thing with. That was particularly with gunbirds. There's two blades going around, and they've got to be balanced. If they're not balanced, when one blade goes to the one side, the aircraft's going to wobble back and forth, and it's got what they call fly-in track. And if one is not in the same track, then it's going to have what we call a vertical beat. And when you're trying to put ordnance on a target, you don't want a vertical beat. You don't want a horizontal beat. You don't want a lateral beat. So you take rounds in the rotor system, not that big a deal. You can still fly. You take a round, depends what happens. I took a round and took out one of the engine oil lines. So now all of a sudden you get a master caution light, and you start to see your temperature going. So I got an idea. Who did we just resupply? Let's go put the aircraft down there within where the friendlies are, and let's jump on the 46 that'll come and get us. That's an easy thing now. Is that being shot down? Well, it means I couldn't fly the damn thing anymore. But nobody. I didn't get a scratch. You feel guilty. The survivor's guilt type of thing. The other one, we were in a nasty shoot 'em up turbine engine, and theoretically we took a round in the second stage. Well, if that turbine engine eats a bullet, it's gonna stop. Well, I was coming back to rearm and reload, and I was on short final, which is a vulnerable time, and the engine quit, and so in a helicopter, if that happens, you do it's called an auto rotation. Well, when you're on short final, there's not a hell of a lot. You're using the inertia that's in the rotor blade, so you're just trying to keep the thing from pranging it on the ground type of thing. We were able to put it down and walk away. We couldn't fly that puppy away, and they externaled it back home, and we got onto an H-46, and the way it was, you'd go back, you get another aircraft, and you went out to go finish your mission. You didn't have much time to talk about it. So that, I mean, everybody, you get shot down. Some guys got shot down and got hurt. Some guys got shot down and they got on the 46 and got the hell out of there. One of the big stories was a Huey pilot that was shot down and the aircraft crashed and so forth, and he got away from it, but he was on the ground for a couple of days before they got him out of there, type of thing. And if you got your signal mirrors and you've got all of your codes that you're supposed to use that day, type of thing, in your survival radios, and you've got your 38 type of thing,
Sure.
right? Your survival gear was, everybody wanted to carry a little bit more. I had a 38 in my survival vest. I had a 45 on my hip. I carried an M1 carbine where I could stuff it in the back of the aircraft.
Just out of curiosity, if you could, Herb, go through the mechanics of having a controlled crash landing.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too.
Well, you got to go to flight school. So when you learn how to fly a helicopter, whether it's the Army used to do it, they were getting teenagers right out of high school. They were getting 17, 18-year-old kids that were becoming warrant officers. And you think of when you look at those whole big string of Hueys, and God bless those guys, they were big targets coming in. And of course, they're all coming in on the same azimuths and same kind of speed with the same dispersal. And if there's a bad guy gunner down there, he's got something that those
you can just spray, basically.
The bad guys were decent troops. We did different things with our section of aircraft or our flight. We would go on big missions. There's a great book if somebody wants to go find Operation Tailhook. Great book. Barry Pensick is the author of that. Our skipper, they were pulling out a SOG team in Laos, and there was a nasty shoot 'em up. But you have to go read some of the heroics that those guys did with the aircraft. So if you lose an engine at altitude, you have to get the flap. You have to think of flaps. That's fixed wing aircraft. You have to get the blade pitched down, and so now it will auto rotate. So the air is coming up underneath the aircraft, and basically what you've got is the momentum that's built up in that RPM that you trade off as ideally if you're not going into the trees or if you're going into a controlled landing space into something. So you practice those. The Army and the Marine Corps actually you do a thing that's part of the training type of thing, and you do them when it's at low speed, you do them when it's at high speed, you do them when it's at altitude, you do a compromise type of thing. I think that's not no disrespect intended. The majority of accidents, if not the most accidents, are caused by pilot error, and so the question is if you can keep the simple stuff and fly the aircraft, keep it straight and level, and don't prang it and don't put it to the side, and don't overreact, and don't over-control, and theoretically the systems work. Now, are there catastrophic failures when with the new Ospreys and with the new 46s and with the new Cobras and tail? Yep, that's where all pilots of all aircrafts, I think they have difficult problems. I mean, we didn't have guided munitions. We didn't have GPS. So that was a different world type of thing. Best bombing I ever saw was A6s. The Phantoms would make a lot of noise, but pretty much we didn't see too many A4s. They were sort of being phased out by the time we got there. A lot of F4s and A6s, like I said, and every now and then you'd see an arc light. You didn't want to be too close to a B-52. They made a bunch of noise, those guys. But when we're going to put a recon team into way out west across the line type of thing, and we're getting a crap shot out of us on the way. It's kind of like we're going to put a team in there to see if the bad guys there. The bad guys there were getting a hell shot at us. Let's move the hell out of the way and let's let some ordnance get in there. That was different. Again, we used some of the weird weapons. You wonder, I was all of 23 years old, 24 years old, as most of us were, type of thing, and we were old men compared to our crew chiefs and stuff. They were teenagers, and of course the grunts. What was the average age of a grunt? They were teenagers. When you pulled a recon team out and a spy rig. Special insertion extraction rig, I think that's what it stands for, which is basically a rope, and the guys would have a shoulder, they'd have these harnesses on with a D-ring, and they'd clip onto this thing, and we were in triple canopy jungle, and aircraft's hovering over the top of that because there's no place to land, and there's targets there, and they're clipping their wounded guys or their dead guys on, and Well, they're going on up, and then we're taking them on back, and you take that team back, and you'd land back at the recon pause, and you'd have to let them down one at a time, and then the recon officer that was on the aircraft would come, and those troops would be at the front of that H-46 saluting them, and then you'd go have a couple of root beers with them that night type of thing. That was
it was the 46s that would have those specialty ropes. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you're essentially providing security for them as you guys are getting back.
We're providing cover for them as best we can. Triple canopy jungle. It's hard to you can't see what we didn't have any radar controlled weapon systems type of thing. There was no infrared stuff. So you got to see. Somebody shooting at you, tracers work both ways. I mean, you can see where that's coming from. So you put a burst down, and that'll generally stop something, or that they're not going to be in the middle of a rice paddy. At least usually they weren't. If they did, you sure they weren't there that long type of thing. You'd put a stop to that. But so again, to go back to the missions. So we had resupply missions every day. We had medevac missions standby every day. You didn't do resupply at night unless you had to. Unless somebody was in a real nasty shoot them up, and then sometimes they'd kick it out of the aircraft type of thing. You think of some of the stuff that you should have seen from Quezon and that type of stuff, the C-130s, and those are because when they're on the ground, that's when the mortars are going to come in. They're all targeted. Yeah. They're all bore sighted on the obvious things for a fixed wing aircraft. If we were putting a team in out in the middle of nowhere, we would, typically the standard tactics is you might be prepping a couple of different zones because they wouldn't know, and you'd put a phony insertion in, and every now and then these guys would get out because, again, you didn't want the bad guys to know where they were, what they were doing. Yeah. So it was a different bang from when they were trying to get out.
I appreciate your explanation of the controlled crash landing because you had mentioned a little bit before we started recording, Herb. There was a surprising comparison from piloting a helicopter to what your later career would be as a dentist. So I'm looking forward when we get to the part of talking about the comparisons. Humor me just for a moment here. I want to go back. Your sister was an Army nurse, is that right?
God bless her. She just passed last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was an Army nurse. Yep, she was on her way to Nam, and she ended up going to Korea. She was a good one. Yeah, she was 3 years older, and she introduced us to all the. Never mind. That worked quite nicely way back when.
If you would, because Jason and I always love hearing about whether it's parents, uncles, siblings, whatever it is, who are also service members. Tell us a little bit about your sister and her service, and if that influenced you.
She was, Pat was, I think, 3 years older than I was. She was born in 1943. I was born 9 months after my dad got back from overseas. So I was born in 1946. So what does that make her? I mean, she went to nursing school. She wanted to do her things. I think she volunteered. She wasn't drafted. And again, that's the family influenced to go do her part. I don't recall, as a matter of fact, at her memory service, at her memorial service, they had some stuff, and somebody was saying that she went to Vietnam, and I said, I don't think so. I think she went to Korea. I know that I remembered. She graduated in 1961 from high school. I think I graduated in 1964 from high school. So, the Vietnam stuff was just cranking up type of thing. So it really wasn't, by the time she was trained, it was probably 1963, and it didn't really get nasty over in Nam until 1965, 1966. What the nurses did in Nam, God bless them. Yeah. What the donut dollies did in Vietnam, God bless them. I mean, just the whole idea of seeing a round eye type of thing, that was a big deal. And, that was the time. Probably now it's different. I'm sure I'll offend somebody that's on active duty now, that we worked hard and we partied hard. I mean, you'd fly your missions, and we were at Marble Mountain. I mean, we had the mess hall was good. We ate sea rations when we went out to the different staging fields, or if we were going out on a mission someplace, you'd pack your sea rations type of thing. But when we came back, we had decent chow in the mess hall, and there was a bar right next door, and we'd come out and have a couple of drinks, and then we'd go get something to eat, and then we'd come out and have a couple more drinks, and then we'd settle down for some serious drinking. And
you had it all planned out. It's part of that scheduling that you were used to.
13 months. I mean, you did that for 13 months, and that was the routine. God bless him, may he rest in peace, our CEO, Navy Cross recipient, Operation Tailwind. We would close the bar, and there were 3 or 4 of us that were real. How do I say shit disturbers nicely? We were the LPA, the Lieutenants Protective Association. We were decent at what we did, and we would. And God bless them, they taught us leadership. They would give us the opportunity to say your piece, and then when it came time, shut the hell up and do what you're told. But they listened, and we would bang on his door, and after we'd close that place down, and even to the point that the group CO was a bird colonel. He had Colonel Smith. He was Lyndon Johnson's aide, and he was climbing the ladder. He would come fly with us.
Really?
He flew in every squadron. When he flew with us, God bless him. The troops loved it. We wore bullet bouncers. What's a bullet bouncer? It's what it was supposed to stop a 30 cal round type of thing. It was I don't know how much it weighed, 25 or 30 pounds. And we painted a bullseye on his. And he sat in the front seat, and he came out, didn't say a word, put his bullet bouncer on, went out, did the mission, and came back. And I think he's still with it. He's 94 or 5 years old. He's in Memphis. God bless him. He's one of the good ones.
I want to go back to your father just for a moment, Herb. Your father, you might have already mentioned this. I'm sorry if you did, but your father was a pilot as well.
No. My dad was Army artillery.
Gotcha, artillery.
His hearing was bad. My hearing got messed up with an M14, and because I didn't know. First time I'm shooting an M14 high-powered rifle, and I didn't know what a spot weld was, and I gave myself a black eye the first time I running through a couple of clips with that thing with the kickback on that. So you learn real quick not to do that. That was before the M16. In the early days, right, when we transitioned from the M14 to the, just bought an M1A1 now, that's the civilian version of the M14, beautiful weapon. When they would transition to the M16, and the first ones, of course, they were still learning how to make them not jam, and there's a lot of, we lost some people in that regard. Our guys didn't like flying, didn't like putting that in the cockpit. So we got M1 carbines type of thing. That was a little small weapon that we had a couple of guys that did grease guns from World War II type of thing.
Wow.
45s. And one of my best buddies is still with us with Firebase Simmons. We called Buck Simmons. Nobody would fly with him because he was a big 6'3" guy. First month he was in country, he got shot down 3 times, so people didn't want to fly with him. He was a magnet ass. So I told him, I said, Buck, I'll fly with you, but you got to sit up straight in a front seat. So we've joked about that for years in some places. That was his favorite thing. He kept gearing up every time he got shot down. He was carrying more weapons and bigger, higher caliber type of things. So some of the guys had to shoot their way out and get their, carrying your little .38 pistol. That didn't really do that much.
Yeah.
So
your father was an artillery officer. Thank you for correcting me there. Did you have a conversation with your dad when you were in that platoon leader course, or when you were leaving for Vietnam? Any conversation you recall?
My mom was ticked that because I volunteered to go do this type of thing, and of course she thought that I was just going to stay home and deliver newspapers or whatever I did when I was a kid. And my dad, he was cool, and I don't know if I mentioned this. My wife's dad, as we're getting serious, and the time comes when we're gonna. He was a farmer in northern Illinois, and that's what I knew. She was a Midwest farmer's daughter. There's a movie about that someplace, and at some point, so now we're getting serious, and I'm going to meet the parents. And she said, well, maybe he won't be too military. And I said, what did he do in the military? I didn't, he was a carrier pilot in World War II. He flew, I think he flew F-4s. And I was like, I said, well, wow. I said, he's a farmer. And they said, well, he stayed in the reserves. I said, what do you mean he stayed in the reserves? He's a farmer. He's a pilot. I said, what is he? He's a Navy 2-star admiral on the Reserve Forces Policy Board. And I'm a little brown bar second lieutenant. And I'm like, oh, man, I wonder how this is going to go. And knocked on the door at Parents' Weekend. And he opens the door, hands me a glass of vodka, and shakes my hand and says, hi, my name is Bill. I mean, so all we did was argue over who picked up the bar bill for the next 35 years till he passed. And but he taught me again how to be a father-in-law. He was fabulous. Yeah. Everybody came from a military background. My wife, when we were all the time that I was in infantry school and on flight school, that's about a year and a half, maybe a little bit more. Let me think a second. So that was from June of '68. And I go overseas in December of '69. So it's about a year and a half. And we were the young marrieds. I mean, most of the bachelor guys, and of course, you get together. We'd have them over for dinner, which would be a jar of ragu and a pound of pasta type of thing, and a 6-pack of beer. I mean, that's basically what it was. But that was, so Ann knew the guys, and she was never really a fan of my time in the Marine Corps. Me going to dental school is sort of throwing a bone to her. I mean, I was a psych social major, tended bar, chased women, played soccer in college type of thing, and went in the Marine Corps. When it was time, after I came back from overseas, I had a nice tour, and we did well. Our squadron did well, and when you came back, you could, I don't want to say you had your dream sheet, you pretty much get your, you be realistic with what I wanted to be. I wanted to go to Pensacola and see what it was like being a flight instructor. And we did that, and there were, there must have been a dozen of us that were all in the squadron together from different squadrons. Now we're in HT-8, which was the helicopter transition, and HT-18, which was the Huey. Then the guys would go out to the fleet. When they got their wings, they would get out to the fleet, and they transition into a 46 or a Cobra or a Huey or whatever it is that they were going to go fly. So, I did that for, I think, another 3+ years when we came back, and great billet, and played a lot of soccer at Navy Pensacola. Every week we'd get these were all real studs, and we started to get women at the end. I had one of the first women helicopter pilots transitioning, but that pendulum was swinging to bringing in female officers through the flight program. And
mid-'70s, is that about right?
Yeah, with early. I would have guessed that was early '70s, because I left active duty '74.
Gotcha.
So that to me would count as early. That was Pensacola. I mean, we were sending guys. They were still going to combat. And so we, by that time they'd had a significant amount of time in training, and my job was the standardization officer, I think it was called. I ended up training instructors, and I would be the check ride to get the check ride if they're going to bounce a guy out of the program because he didn't meet the requirements. And you didn't let them go through because they're going to go hurt somebody. Yeah. And sometimes they'd have different protocol where they'd have to go back if they got a down, was the thing, an up or a down on the flight, and they have to get your check marks. I still use those same kind of concepts with my students. You have a check ride, and you'd have an instructional hop, and you'd have a check ride type of thing. And an instructional hop, you tell them, you show them, you teach them, and it was all choreographed. It was all the people that were responsible for that, and you had to be playing through that system. Yeah. When the time came that the student had to do the procedure, and you've got your arms crossed, and you say, "Okay, man, this is your check ride.
Sure.
If you kill me, I'm going to kick your ass." There was some stressful and things doing that. But
was there anyone that didn't take it serious, or were they pretty much all serious about it?
Oh no, they're serious about it. But some guys just didn't have a skill set. I mean,
I gotcha.
I don't have a clue what the washout rate was, but there was a washout rate.
Okay.
By the time we got them, they're less than a year from getting their wings type of thing. And so they've already got a bunch of time invested in. I mean, it's very structured.
Yeah.
Now I think it's still similar in the sense there's still a PLC program, but all pilots now go through the infantry course. They learned from the NOM experience, I think, that it benefits the pilots to know what the hell the grunt's thinking.
Sure.
And how that's supposed to play out type of thing. Of
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, Jason, just a moment ago, because it made me think of a question I want to be sure to ask. What does it take to be an excellent pilot?
One of the things I preach that to my students now: control the controllables. So part of when I could tell you who I was flying with was on a night medevac, and we're getting shot at, and the tracers are coming up at you, and you're going out into the black. When you're heading west from Da Nang, there's no street lights out there. I mean, it's just black.
Pitch, yeah.
It's just black. And there's mountains out there, and theoretically you're dead reckoning as to how you're going to be doing stuff. So when we're getting shot at, I can remember cringing a little bit and looking down, and you take your bullet bouncer and you put it up in front of your face type of. I remember doing that, and I remember looking down at my crotch saying, well, that's pretty damn stupid, to leave that vulnerable. And I put it down and I put it down, and I was like, I can't control where that's at, but I can sure as hell put some suppressive fire down there that'll make them stop that. Or you can, certain altitudes, right? Either you need to be down in the trees or you need to be above small arms. That was above 1,500 feet if we were AGL.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Type of thing that, then of course, if you had a higher weapon system, we didn't have to do any, there was no radar controlled guns, or at least I didn't go up against any. But we had mostly small arms fire. It was AK stuff, and the occasional 51. If you saw a 51, but you get down in the trees, because then the reaction time is better. Being aware of what was out there in the AO, I mean, that was a question of preparation, right? So if theoretically there were the maps, you don't want to be putting that stuff on out there. I mean, everything was with a whiz, we called it a whiz wheel. I thought I saw something in one of your displays here that reminded me of it, that, you didn't say, hey, I'm at grid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You'd have to send, I'm at set Alpha over Bravo, and it's whatever you made up at that minute type of thing. So the bad guys that were listening on the radios didn't really get that type of thing. Yeah. There wasn't going to be a generalization. I get off on, if you can't tell, I get off on tangents. So you got to bring me back.
Well, maybe a different question, Ethan, is the guys that got washed out. What was a couple things that washed them out versus the guys that made it? Reaction to press.
I mean, some guys would just lose it. Or they didn't have the skill set. They didn't. I mean, the visualization of, there's a visual perspective of. I'm laughing because in dental procedures now, I talk to my students about flying straight and level, or being in a nose up or a nose down, or left bank or a right bank. And there's some things that we do when we're trying to make smiles for veterans. It's parallel to what it is on whatever flying instruments. Flying instruments in a helicopter is not easy, and damn things rattling out all over the place type of thing. But you got to have some basic idea of what's wings level, and you don't want to be, we don't have to worry about stalling the aircraft type of thing, but you don't want to be in too much of a nose down either. I mean, type of thing, and being aware of what your surroundings are and paying attention to what's your scan pattern, and the aircraft being in what we call trim. The rudder pedals on the aircraft, we would have guys that couldn't maintain. When you fly in a helicopter, you're using your left hand to do the throttle and your right hand to do the this, and your feet to do that, and you've got to be chewing gum at the same time and talking on the radio at the same time,
dodging bullets,
trying to get a look at your map, and changing stuff on the radio. You're multitasking out there, and of course now. All of the heads-up displays and all of the stuff that these guys have got that we wish that we'd had. At the time, we had what was called in the front seat that controlled the minigun, and you sat on top of the barrel of 40-millimeter rounds. I think it was 350 40-millimeter rounds and 4,000 minigun rounds, 7.62, whatever it is, 6-barrel Gatling gun, if you will. We had what was called a reflex infinity sight. All it was a piece of plexiglass with a light bulb that would shine up and would give you this little stuff that now you had to play that on out there. Well, it made a difference if again, I can get into some of the missions that you would lead. It's just, I never did well shooting birds. I did well at shooting bad guys when I had to. that you had to lead them type of thing, or you had to figure out that they were going to be going into the tree line. I got an idea. Let's put it in the tree line and walk it back differently. One of an extraction mission, Scotty is still with us. Scotty and I were doing a recon extraction, and they're surrounded, and I mean they're in a bad way, and the weather's nasty, and we couldn't even have our wingman, and we sent our wingman back to Anwa. We said wait until it clears, and we're doing single bird, and the fast movers were dropping bombs, and the bad guys were getting closer, and so we're hovering over the top of the trees type of thing, and the trooper down there says, hey, have you got my panel? And you see the panel? I said, yeah. He says, okay, watch my frag. And I swear to God, the guy's pump. he puts his frag not even 5 meters away. Wow. And I said, okay. I said, keep your head down. We could walk it in. We would come in and we would stop it at that point type of thing, but we would go thump, thump, thump. And the point was just to get them, get them the hell out of there so that we could, and we did. and we got them out of there type of thing. And we partied with those guys. But that's, when you're talking to the thing, when you get the visuals with the friendly, and you got to have some idea of where the good guys are and the bad guys are, where you think the bad guys are going to be. Sure as hell, knock wood, that I'm aware of. Freddie McCorkle, God bless him, ended up being a 3-star. He was in charge of the Osprey thing. He was a 46 pilot with cojones that we're doing a medevac on a finger, and he's on the top of the finger, and he's taking rounds from underneath the aircraft. Well, I can't shoot under the aircraft. I get an idea, get the hell out of the way, get the troops out of there, and then I'll go in and shoot type of thing. So he's given me crap for the last 60 years that he got wounded on this mission type of thing. God bless him. So those guys, that's a different thing. If you read some of the heroics of those guys that were, picking them up in the zone, or, the Army would go in with their Red Cross on the side of the aircraft with, I don't even think they had an M60 on some of those things, they would single bird, and it just didn't make sense to me. We did everything. The guns would go in first. We would try and secure the zone, and then you're cleared in, and then if they were coming in, we would be shooting, and if we had to, in a 360 all around that zone type of thing, keeping the bad guys' heads down type of thing. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, Herb, because just recently we had another Vietnam vet, Mr. Garvis Pollard, another officer actually who was there in Nam. A question I asked him that I think I'd like to ask you as well, because you're kind of stepping on that line of my curiosity. Did you feel, as an officer there in Vietnam, as a pilot, that the Vietnam War in many ways was U.S. commanders shooting in the dark, trying to get it right?
We were really down the food chain. We're out in the bush. We're supporting the guys that are out in the bush. Our mission was to take care of our troops and to take care of the aircraft type of thing that were taking care of the troops. We had a couple of guys that with the political, as it started to, whatever the perspectives were that was going on. This would have been late '69 and into '70, and there was already some bad PR. The press didn't help what was going on, but I didn't listen to that crap. I mean, we would listen to the music type of thing, but. We had a CO that we had an all officers meeting, an AOM, and I still remember in his southern drawl, he's deceased 3 times a Silver Star. He says, "Boss, it's quite simple. If you don't fly, young Marines die. Now, if you got a problem with that, you come see me and we'll fix it so that you ain't gonna fly." And a couple of guys went home, and I mean, but it was that simple. And I mean, we were there to support the grunts, and we accepted that, at least the guys that I connected with, and I feel like we made a difference. And we made a difference every time you went out there. You were doing something that was going to be Marine Corps doctrine, supporting that grunt type of thing.
Very mission focused, not worrying about what's on the, having those blinders on. It sounds like not worrying about what's going on outside.
When I came back, I went to a military environment, and we were training hard charging studs that were going right into combat pretty damn quick type of thing. So it wasn't like that we had a lot of political unrest that were tolerated in the ranks, and we didn't have the liberal perspective, if that's what it was, from the media, that didn't have an influence, at least where we were in our training command type of thing, or for that matter, for certainly when we were in combat. So that's what it worked. It worked for me.
Just out of curiosity, in an interview of yours that I watched, Herb, you had mentioned that one of your students had no idea who Jane Fonda was. I'm curious, did you have an experience with Jane Fonda or surrounding Jane Fonda or that celebrity?
I certainly don't. I don't know enough about the timeline of that, but I'm one of the ones that, when the Marine platoon that did an about face when she was walking by in the parade in Atlanta, we cheered that. I mean, we thought that was pretty damn cool. I mean, so that's one of those things that come on. I mean, gee, compare Anne Margaret with Jane Fonda type of thing, and who did what to support the troops, from the concept of supporting the troops. Again, did I learn that from my dad? Yeah, I think so. Did I learn that from my XO and my ops officer and my CO? Yeah, I think so. Did I learn that from the guys that I flew with every day, and whether it was in the H-46 squadron that they'd come in the bar and give a shit about what we didn't do on that mission or what we could have done better? Yeah, I think so. So, mission focused, and that was something that, I knew that I was being brainwashed in the Marine Corps when you learn that type of thing. And when it was execution, when we went up to the CO's funeral, it was out in California. And it's interesting, his family didn't know too much about what he did. And Navy Cross recipient, let me tell you, you're doing some stuff. Yeah. And in the back of the room is the latest, I think it was 269 was the squadron, is, here's the colonel and a couple of majors, and the lowlies were the captains. And, it's like now it's different. We had 50 lieutenants that were doing stuff day to day.
Wow. And
so we had, I was... Let me think. The whole time I was in Nam, I was a first lieutenant, and I became a section leader, and I became a flight leader, and I became a test pilot, and I mean, I worked in operations, and you had your collateral duty job type of thing. So you were working. I mean, it wasn't, and it was 7 days a week, and I went on R&R, and
ain't no weekends in the military.
Well, if you had to put one in a rice paddy, you could run over to Da Nang and you could jump on a C-130, and wherever it went, you went and sat at that bar for 2 days and got shit-faced. I mean, and did that. I went to Okinawa, and I went to Thailand, and I went to someplace, Udorn. Yeah, we went to Udorn, I went to Longapo, and I went to Clark Air Force Base, wherever that was in Okinawa. So, yeah, that was my 3 times. I started to say this earlier. My dad... I don't know the sequence and the time frame, but while we were in Vietnam at the time, the Secretary of the Navy, John Chafee, was either before that or after that. He was a senator later. At one point, when he was the governor, I think my dad was a military attaché or something. And in any event, so when we know that they're getting, we know that they're going to get a tour from the honcho here, and he's got his whole entourage, and so they're going through the records, and they're getting anybody and everybody that's from Rhode Island to stand in line for the static display. Yeah. And we did a hell of a static display of the aircraft. I mean, they had the aircraft sitting there, and they had all of the rockets that were fanned out in front of it with all of the miniguns that were out there, and here's the 40 millimeter. It was quite impressive. Yeah. And then we're standing there, here's the lieutenant standing, and then the guy's coming by, and he's shaking your hand, and he's going by, and he says, "Silva, H, you Herbie's son?" "Yes, sir." And he's, "Oh, let me get a picture for this and that and the other thing." So there they were, and the 4th of July parade in Bristol, Rhode Island is a big deal. And here goes the Secretary of the Navy, former governor, going by, and, "Hey, Herb, I saw your son in Vietnam. He's winning the war." And I get crap from my folks that they heard from the Secretary of the Navy that they saw me rather than from me that I saw him. I was like, "Hey, I was busy. We had to go fly our mission."
You were getting bad guys.
One of the reasons the Jane Fonda and the celebrity and the politicalization of the Vietnam War is interesting to me. But another reason I wanted to bring that up is because I want to get your perspective, Herb, and your personal experience with your return home and being welcomed home, or a lack thereof.
Well, I landed, things I remember, we landed in Northern California, and we were rushing to get to the airport, and we paid some guy a whole bunch of bucks to get us to the airport to try and get a flight out of there. And, not having been in a vehicle in however long, and we're in the back seat with your bag in front of you, and the guy's going 100 miles an hour getting to the airport or whatever it was, and got to the airport quick. And in the airport, we got into a confrontation, but again, we were just, you're rushing to get to your gate, as the case may be, type of thing. And there was bad weather. I flew into Chicago, and my father-in-law and my mother-in-law were in the front seat, and they picked us up. My wife's in the back seat, and I'm attacking her and doing things that Marines do when they've not seen their honey for a period of time. and it was nasty weather, and I don't know how many inches of snow they got that day, but we woke up the next day, and went and had the Norman Rockwell dinner at Grandpa's house type of thing. So the family support I had was, very good. And I don't know the interval. I don't know the interval. I had to be I know I was the first week in January. I had to be in Pensacola. And so now you're a new guy in Pensacola, but now I don't even think I was a captain then yet. I think I was a captain after I'd been in the squadron a while. And so now you're a new guy and you're learning a new aircraft, and, you've got a reputation that, you've been there, and, I could handle the aircraft. I'd nap night
Sure.
right away. I still think I could ride that bicycle. Within the military environment, now you're trying to create not just I was basic H-57, which is like a Bell Jet Ranger, like your news air helicopter. It was a turbine engine aircraft, and it's very sensitive. And then our troops, they would do the Huey after we had them. I think we had them for 50 or 60 hours, and they had a solo within so many hours, and they had to do this procedure and they had to do that procedure. So it's a simple thing. A normal approach is a procedure beginning at pattern airspeed and altitude and ending in hover over pre-selected positions. I mean, whatever. There was a standard spiel that I can remember bits of it even decades later here. But so then you would do crosswind landings, or you would do downwind landings, or you would do auto rotations, or now you got to navigate. Now you've got to do whatever. I mean, so you can do low level, you can do altitude, you can, at some point you start playing with formation stuff. So, there's this evolution of the sequence of what's happening in the development of any pilot, but within Pensacola with the Navy and Marine stuff going on there. Are you kidding? I mean, everybody's gung-ho, and these are all people that have been there or going there type of thing. So it wasn't like you were out in the civilian world like some of the grunts that, they were getting shot at all the time, and they were out in the field and they didn't have food, and now all of a sudden they're home and getting spit on, or now they're just going to the bar or whatever as they're dealing with their post-traumatic stress. So, everybody's got survival guilt that, your buddies that didn't come back, and we lost half a dozen guys, God bless them. And they're but for the grace of God. Yeah, so there's that perspective. Personally, I did my thing where, I wrote schedules. I wrote the schedule. So on the missions that guys didn't come back, there's a thing of, oh, well, hell, that could have been that guy, or that could have been me, or that type of stuff. So but you get through that. I mean, we drank a lot. I had to learn not to drink. Smoked a lot of cigarettes. Just right, Pall Malls, a carton of cigarettes, a carton of Pall Malls in Vietnam was $1.
Wow.
I mean, you used to light one cigarette with the other one, and until we learned. I mean, we had ashtrays in the aircraft. Type of thing. Wow. So I mean, that was old core. So you were doing smoking and drinking type of thing was heavy, and the Naval Command. When a kid soloed, I'm not supposed to call him kid. When that lieutenant or when that ensign soloed, you went to the bar, and he had party, and then there was a group that got their wings that Friday, and we went to the bar. Yeah. And, so that was now, heck, you go 16 miles an hour in a 15-mile-an-hour zone, you're in trouble type of thing. So that timing has changed type of thing.
Very different culture.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was right. I mean, that's just what it was type of thing. Yeah. And knock wood, I was lucky. I didn't wrap my car around a pole. I didn't hurt anybody that I know of. I didn't, having said that, are there people that had problems with alcohol? Yep. Are there people that had problems with other things? Sure. With relationships? Sure. My wife put up with me until I started to come around and not be so crazy. And I still stay in touch with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that we were all together in Nam and together in Pensacola. And, there's still, I mean, that's a bond that you don't make in the civilian world that I'm aware of. It's certainly not in my experience because I didn't have the civilian world otherwise. But, my bit with my students now, it's part of I'm the nutty professor, and I think I got something to teach them to make common sense more common. But there's some parallels into what that is, and again, I still use the line, control the controllables. You got to, get good at flying it. Back then it was get good at flying the aircraft. Now it's get good with your handpiece. Yeah. Then it might be with the communication. Well, you got to talk to patients, and there's a redundancy in the skill set that you're going to do in talking to human beings that are under stress, or you're under stress, or everybody's under stress. So
I want to cap your time in Vietnam before we get into post-service. I want to make sure I got these numbers right. Over 1,000 missions and 700 combat hours.
Yeah, something like that. Missions, mission credits. We would go to Lemon 1-4. Actual was the Korean Marines. They were really good troops. They were besides U.S. Marines, they were the best troops in my opinion. But you'd go to resupply the Korean Marines when they were out in the field. They were badass troops. Let me tell you, I go with them anytime, anywhere. So we'd have to go get the dream sheet. So you're going to go to these 10 different positions. You're going to go to these different things. So rather than try to do that over the radios, you would land at one aircraft would land at the zone, and you would get the dream, what we called the dream sheet. Here's this pause, this at this time, here's what you're doing. And the 46s would have to coordinate going back and getting whatever that load was, that external load, that internal load, whatever the case may be. Sure. We would precede them to the zone, and we would make sure the zone was secure before we would bring that aircraft in, type of thing. So it was a correlation. Well, if they had 10 missions, I mean, that was 10 mission points or whatever. Sure. And you got an air medal for every 20 missions. So I'm at 40, I think 48. And I didn't quite do 1,000 missions. We had a couple of guys that did that. I think I had 700 plus combat hours. But we used to joke, we'd give a hard time to guys. When do you count your time? When you crank it up and you're on and you're sitting there and you've got a bad vibe and you're calling maintenance, when I lifted the aircraft up and I started taxiing is when I hit the clock. But we needed to know the time that the thing was rotating, because you're wearing parts. The aircraft were, we had 25-hour maintenance, and we had 50-hour maintenance, and we had 100-hour maintenance. And I mean, we would put those aircraft and you'd stress them type of thing. And, you'd worry about over-torquing this, and not to mention when you get a hole somewhere here or there. And Sure. We were getting holes pretty much all the time. Somebody was getting shot at. If the aircraft gets shot up, then, I mean, when we come back from a mission, there would be a swarm of the maintenance people. And I think at the time, I think it's pretty accurate, it was 10 man-hours per flight hour. But recognize that, you had somebody from weapons and somebody from hydraulics and somebody from airframe and somebody from whatever. And, I mean, you might have 5 or 6 people scrambling all over the aircraft at the same time, and then if they got to change a blade, my God, I don't know how many guys are doing that, and then you got to have a test top, and you got to have so many people on that, and if you got a hole through this, you got to do that. So I mean, the maintenance people were fabulous. The support that we got from our troops, and I came out of flight school with strong numbers. I did well in flight school, but that don't mean crap until you go see what's going to happen when you're getting shot at, and can you do the rest of it. But I was smart enough to, when I was a rookie lieutenant and a new in the squadron, and I took a paper bag with a bottle of blackjack, and I went and talked to the gunny sergeant that was in the maintenance hangar and that was in front of the QA, and I said, Gunny, I'm Lieutenant Silva, I'm new in the squadron, and I'm a pilot. I said, but I know that I'm a rookie and I don't know shit. I'd like you people to teach me how to pre-flight the aircraft. He said, Lieutenant, who taught you how to do that? And I was like, what you got there? And I said, well, it's a little about track. Well, you're going to do just fine here, Lieutenant. and I became a test pilot for those guys, which meant that they teach you what QA means, quality analysis. And they're looking at it with the magnifying glasses, and they're looking at the stuff, and they're teaching you different tolerances of what you're doing on a pre-flight rather than, kick the tire, light the fire, and let's go. Sure. So the people were terrific. The whole squadron was transitioning from Hueys. Recognized with a Huey, you had 2 pilots, but you had a crew chief and you had another gunner out there. So you had a crew of 4 on a Huey. So those guys weren't flying. So when I was doing my test top, I'd always take the crew chief with me and say, hey, get up in the front seat. And, because now I need that for weight and balance. And we'd go on out, and okay, we get at altitude or whatever. Say, okay, here, let me see what you got with this, and this is what you're doing with that. And then we say, hey, let's go down and see if we can get something where you could pull that trigger. And those guys loved it. And you weren't supposed to go looking for missions, and we didn't do stuff single mission type of thing, but you would go find a target to shoot up a tree line or something.
Sure.
We were right on the South China Sea, and if it was bad weather, the aircraft was, theoretically it was instrument rated, but you didn't want to be flying in the goo in that damn thing.
Yeah.
Certainly not up in the mountains. But if you were coming back from a mission and you had to break through the cloud cover, and you're on slope, and you're on glide path, and you're on slope, and you're on glide path, and you're on azimuth, and you're on, and you come down 200 meters out to the sea, you're a little bit pissed off. You don't want to be doing that. Again, we had, who knows? I think we probably lost more to pilot error than we did to people getting shot up and shot down. We lost people getting shot up and shot down. Obviously, God bless them. But the guys that did a mistake, and now all of a sudden there's a couple of more guys that are dead, and they're just as dead, type of thing. Is that a casualty of war? Hell yes. Is that a casualty of flight? Yep. And do you try and weed that guy out if you can in the training command? Maybe. I don't have a clue. That's not saying the guys that there was, but typically if it's a flight, we lost 4 guys in a midair type of thing, and that's not the. It's not like when in World War II, you read some of that stuff when there was a lot of aviators that were lost, pilots and crews. You get somebody going on they're taking a B-29 on a test top, and they take off, and they're off over the ocean, and they never come back, and they never hear from them. Yeah. And you lost how many people? Come on. There's a whole bunch of those people that were casualties of war type of thing. Not to mention when they're coming back and the aircraft's all shot up. And so I still don't believe it. We're on a mission. We're up in what they call Elephant Valley, and wingman. There's a thump, and our wingman comes up, and the radios are okay. We know that something's happened to the aircraft. And you're looking at the gauges, and they can fly with. You can remember who you're flying with. Bob Dobbins. May he be doing well. And wingman comes up and he says, "You guys all right? The front half of your aircraft's gone," and. And there was a big hole in the front of the aircraft, and we were able to fly it back. And here comes the fire trucks, and here comes the foam, and we get the hell out of there. And we're standing there, and we're like, what the hell was it? And they said, well, we think you got hit with an RPG. I said, what do you mean I got hit with an RPG? Well, I'm sitting on top of all the ammo. How can we get hit with an RPG and there's no sympathetic detonation? That doesn't make any sense. I'm thinking it's a bad round that went off or something or other, right? And I said, well, no, Lieutenant. I said, well, I'll be up in the bar. Let me know when you guys, there's a degree of luck involved. And when you say your prayers, if somebody says they're not scared, they're full of shit.
That's that's right.
Thanks for capping off your experience in Vietnam for us, Herb. It's truly fascinating, and
we could spend all day on that.
Oh yeah, and the things that you and your fellow Marines did obviously are honorable, but also just brave of you guys to do. I want to get into the 2 things you did after service, because I love that there's this, there's almost this yin and yang, I think is something you said earlier, of what you did as a Marine versus what you did post-service. So you've mentioned soccer a few times, and if I recall correctly, there was even a time, if not more, that you played soccer while in country in Vietnam. Tell us about your time as a referee with the U.S. Soccer Federation.
I went to a small school in I think there was 1,100 students. I played football in high school until I broke my collarbone. I played baseball until I got hit in a thing and broke my face. And what else am I missing? I played basketball, and I was the number 6 man, and we did well and all that stuff. And most of those guys are gone with us, whatever. So I was not a terrific athlete, but I was in shape. And when I got to college, it was wonderful. I loved it. And so I took it up with a passion, and I became mediocre as a mediocre player playing on a Division III college team. Went in the military. I was in shape for sure. When I did my OCS thing between my junior and senior year, I came back in the best shape of my life. So now when I went on active duty and you went to Vietnam, it was more of a joke. We did something with the Republican of Korea Marines type of thing, and we're standing out there with your combat boots, and you didn't like being in an open field type of thing, and you don't know who's on the sideline and who's going to toss it, whatever. So we did that one time, and then we were like, no, we're not going to do that again. But when we came back in Pensacola, here were all these, these were all super duper studs. Let me tell you, these were all Division I athletes, and these guys that had played really good, and of course they're very fit, and they're all psyched for what they're going to be doing. And we would meet them, and we took a new class, I think, every 2 weeks. And I did some of the intro courses, and I said, hey, who played Division I soccer? You two, come with me. And they became my students, or we would go. And there was terrific leagues. Navy Pensacola would play Air Force Montgomery, or would play Navy New Orleans, or would play, we went all over the South, and the students needed their cross-country time. And so they would fly the aircraft there.
How about that?
They would fly back, and we'd have these
Incredible.
great games.
That's cool.
So it was really cool. Now, we were doing a game, and I can still remember this, in Mobile, Alabama. And I think I must have been a wise ass and said something to the ref, and he gave me my yellow card or whatever it was, and he says, if you think you could do better, why don't you here's the damn whistle. And I was like, well, shit, I think I could. Let me try that. So when I went to dental school, and now I'm standing around, and I applied to dental school to get my wife off my butt. I was ready to go back to another tour, and I had to go back and take science courses and apply, and I applied to one school, and I got in, and I had a Vietnam veteran scholarship, and now you want to stay married, you're going to go to dental school. So, and there we were in a little small town in Alton, Illinois, and in the newspaper there was the thing for the youth, the youth organization, and so I just went to stand on the sidelines and look around, and here were I started off doing 8 games on Saturdays and 6 games on Sundays with 5 and 6 year old kids.
Wow.
And, here I am. I'm still in the reserve. I'm still a Marine captain. And, I've got my military bearing, and I can learn the rules. And I'm not going to take crap from the parents. And I'll give crap to the parents back, and, which was something different than them messing around. So I went from little kids to bigger kids to competitive kids to high school kids to college kids. I did that all when I was in dental school, in the 3 years I was in dental school. And when I made the transition in moving from Alton to where we are now in Chesterfield, and I made the jump into doing that time college ranks in St. Louis. That was big time, and I climbed the ladder very quickly and got the opportunity to go blow a whistle to be part of the officiating team in the North American Soccer League, which was the early, pretty much English-dominated professional soccer league in the 60s and into the 70s, and I jumped into the indoor game, which was the major indoor soccer league, and I loved it. It was challenging, and there were all these decisions, and that's where you learned that no decision is a decision, no call is a call. And, all of a sudden we were doing games in front of 22,000 people and having crap thrown at us and learning how to do games on TV, and I have a gift for gab, and I started doing some instructional stuff, and long story short, this is while I'm doing dentistry. So, they developed, that would have been in late 70, maybe 79. They were advertising for quote unquote full-time referees. I said, well, what does full-time referees mean? And they said, oh, well, you're going to have to do 3 or 4 games a week. And I said, well, I'd like to apply for that. They said, what do you mean? You're a dentist. And I said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I could do that because I am a dentist. I'll make my time work around that. So I organized my schedule, and I could go do a game and fill in the blanks. We had a big team in St. Louis, the St. Louis Steamers at the time in that league, and you could do Kansas City, you could go to Cleveland, you could go to Chicago, you could go to Minneapolis, you could go to Denver, you could go to Dallas, and be back the next morning at 6 o'clock flight. Because we had TWA here, so I climbed that ladder.
That was awesome.
And so again, I was doing my dental practice was gradually increasing, and I was doing this, and it was fun, and it was fun. They paid us to go all over the country, and it was a lot of fun. And so then I took up as an administrative thing. I worked for U.S. Soccer. I ended up doing that it's funny because I sold my practice, about 10 years ago, and I had backed away from the present professional league that's now high dollar. we used to count legs when we were in the stands type of thing back when. But the indoor game did very well. But the outdoor game started coming along, and of course now they're umpteen $1 million to get a franchise, and they've got full-time referees that are making a hell of a lot more money than we did, type of thing. But I don't think they're having as much fun as we did. You couldn't put a dollar amount on that. So that I try to teach my students now and emphasize for the students. I've had a good life. God bless. Thank you to God, and God bless my family for putting up with me, and my wife who did stuff with my 4 kids and our 4 kids. And in fact, when I was gone, and she was doing a lot of laundry and my uniforms and putting up with the stuff when I would be gone, type of thing, on the weekends to go do those games. But that we kept the family stuff together. Coached all my kids' teams, and then someplace that all came together. They became patients, or you'd go to the schools and you teach referee courses, and they became patients. And, so
now you ended up in the Hall of Fame. I just want to make sure we get that in of the U.S. Soccer Federation. Is that right?
Well, there's different halls of fame. In the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame, I'm in the U.S. Soccer Amateur Hall of Fame, I'm in the New England Hall of Fame. That's I defer to those people. I don't, come on, They paid me to do stuff that was fun. I think that we did a good job with that, and I've just now started going back and doing a couple of lectures, because we teach people. I'd like to think we teach people how to be people oriented. You can be a robot as a referee, or you can be personable, and you can be a little bit too much of one or too much of the other, type of thing. So it's got to be someplace in the middle, and you got to know when. I get a kick out of it when we were doing games and we were on TV, and my kids were just with them earlier today. My middle son, he would be able to tell you, oh, that guy's in trouble. Dad's pissed, because he could read my facial. He could read the facial expressions, because he was on the receiving end of that stuff. And when he said, so you teach that you got to know your neutral position and your disdain, and you got to know that you're showing concern, and you got to know the rules, the laws. You got to know when to call them and when to hold them, type of thing, right? Yeah. So that, again, know your limitations. You can teach that. I can teach that to my dental students, and I can teach that to the referee stuff. I think it's been very beneficial, and I've been very, very fortunate for how well I've been able to get along and still do mediocre work and still get recognized for it.
I think that is such a cool aspect of your life post-service, Herb.
Absolutely.
And I think it just speaks volumes. I get what you're saying about Hall of Fames, but I think it speaks volumes about how you were as a referee and how respected you were in that community. Before we close, we absolutely have to hear about Smiles for Veterans.
So I sold my practice, and, because we had been someplace, my dad taught me you got to put money away for a rainy day, and we had put money into retirement accounts and all of those kinds of things. I had a family practice in Chesterfield. I was part of the community, and my staff was part of the community. I had people that worked for me for 35 years.
Wow.
I think that means that I was paying them too much. Or we still meet. The first person that we hired, she's just now retired at 89, and she's in terrific shape. She's a tennis player. And I said, Shirley, what do you mean? Why are you hanging this up? Well, it interferes with her paddle ball, something or other now. So she stayed active, type of thing, which has kept me active. And I like to think that I paid attention. I've had some issues with peripheral neuropathy, and whether or not it's from Agent Orange or whether it's not or whatever. And God's been good to me. I've never gone to the VA. I've never had to go to the VA versus the numbers of veterans in the country. For round numbers, if we think there's 20 million veterans left in the country, it's actually a little bit less than that now. But if we start off with the number, most don't realize that veterans. I'm a dentist, and I've got a skill set, and I can give my time, I can give my money, which I've done that, but I can give technique, and I can give leadership, type of thing. And where did I learn some of that in the Marine Corps? That goes together. So, of the 20 million veterans, only 10% are eligible with the VA for dental treatment.
Wow.
So do the math. What does that mean? Of 20 million, that means 18 million don't have any dental treatment. So we started in the school. We do a thing that's called Dentistry in the community. This was a relatively new school. We've graduated 9 classes, I think we're up to now. And I was there in the first year, not in the first year that they started the school, but in the first year of the class they graduated. And part of it was to go what they call a dentistry in the community program. And we go to this church in rural Missouri, and rural Missouri is in the boot heel. And it's in a church with donated equipment. And they started years ago. And the first time I went there, all they do there is relieve acute discomfort. All we do there is take teeth out that need to be taken out. And so the first time I went, and I'm looking around and I'm staring at this, and I'm like, holy mackerel, this is terrific for the students. This is terrific experience. And the administrator's got a Marine plaque on his wall. So I said, are you a Marine? I said, well, gee, do you have veterans around here? Wouldn't it be cool if we came down with veteran faculty to treat veteran patients, and we've got veteran students? Why don't let's do that? Well, that was in 2016. So we started with 5 guys that we did, and we created their smiles. I'm not in dentistry, there's specialties type of thing. My specialty is a little bit of everything. But these were people that needed their teeth out in dentures. We started at the dental school level. I mean, you know how long it's going to take, you know what it's going to cost. Free dentistry ain't free. It's costing somebody something. Sure. So I got an idea. I came back and I wrote a letter to the president of the university, not understanding what a chain of command is. And I said, hey, this is really terrific. And, you know, this is wonderful what you're doing. You're serving the needy. You're serving your mission. I'm mission oriented. Now what? So that was the school's 135th or 38th, whatever it was, anniversary. So he sent a check for $10,000 and he said, okay, put up or shut up. So we set up a deal, and we got reduced fees from the lab, and we got this company to give us free material and that company to give us free material. And I kicked a couple of the students in the butt and said, hey, you need to do these procedures. Look, this is paid for. Go bond with that veteran. And we did it initially on a Saturday because we didn't want to interfere with the school. Sure. Well, at our school, we've now seen more than 2,000 veterans. We've now completed more than 700. We just started another 160 veterans. And within Missouri, we've got over 400,000 veterans who don't have dental benefits. So, you know, where do they get them? And many of these people don't have the resources. And, you know, why are they in trouble? Either because they're old farts or because they've had trauma or because whatever. Who knows? I don't care. We just want to give them their smile back. Part of our school's, the university's perspective is that oral health is that's the gateway to total health.
Sure.
So, absolutely.
So you've got, you know, and I'll show you some pictures later that with the people that you give them their smile back, and whether it's their kids or their wife or their significant others that are saying, you know, they're giving you hugs and they're hugging and whatever. Yeah. And our students bond, it takes months to even up to a year to get it start to finish from working to get it started until it's completed. It depends how complex the case is. And, of course, the more complex it is, the more money you need to offset those expenses. So that's become my reason for being. Like I said, we've graduated 9 classes. In the last month, I've had referrals from 3 graduates who are doing stuff with veterans in their private practice now. That's great. That I think that they learned some of that when they were having a root beer with us after we were in Dexter doing what it is that we do. So, hey, if you've got veterans that are in need of dental treatment, please share I do best with email. I don't do well with my phone numbers. I'm too busy walking the clinic floor.
We'll do that.
But we try and do that, get that word out there, and we try and connect that veteran with you know, and it's not for everybody. Hey, it says dental school, things go slow. You'll get good treatment, but it'll take a while because we got to have that doctor and that doctor and that doctor. The students are doing everything with a please may I, and they've got to be checked and so forth. But you'll get good treatment, or we'll do it again until it's done right.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that you're doing that.
I love that Herb saw a need, an enormous need. I wasn't aware of that just in the state of Missouri, how many vets are going without proper dental care. But Herb saw a need, and I'd like to make a connection to him as a pilot. Just like the precision it took for him as a Cobra pilot, Scarface 22 double deuce, the precision it took for him to aid the Marines, soldiers, whoever on the ground with suppressive fire. He saw a need here for veterans in the state of Missouri and in St. Louis specifically, and taking care of it one by one.
Well, I'm the shit disturber that gets other people to do the work type of thing, like I say. And God bless our faculty and the students and the support staff that we've got. I go around and I tell the jokes, and I joke that there's no charge for the entertainment type of thing. That, I can do this procedure or that procedure still type of thing. But the whole point is that we're training, saying, go back to what we did in the training command. And you're trying to get that guy to do it on his own. Well, we're trying to get these students to do it on their own. And you got to take that small step before you can get them jogging type of thing. Again, there's been good support. We've had good results. Again, the numbers that I shared with you from the whatever that is, the state is now giving us. I always, and of course, who knows what's happening with the political situation and support money for all the different I didn't know what an FQHC was. That's the school is partnered with Affinia Healthcare, a federally qualified health center. Read the government's way of getting low-cost treatment or no-charge treatment to patients that are in need. Well, all we're trying to do is enroll some of the veterans in that program type of thing, and how do we identify that? So I've been to the ADA, American Dental Association. I've been to their meetings several times. There's all sorts of different groups around the country, but there's not a national organization. I don't want to be a national organizer, but there's 70 dental schools in the country, and I've been to 2 of them so far, saying, hey, your students need to do these procedures. Hey, you've got veterans wherever you live. You've got veterans in every state. And it's a question of how you can make that service available to those people that need that treatment, and your students need that treatment. Let's get the 2 of them together and go find a couple of bucks to take care of it.
That's awesome.
So the puzzle works.
One of the things that really struck me today is a theme that I've had over these last 3 years, but recently since April, is that every veteran that we have interviewed is that these guys continue to give of themselves over and over and over again, gave to the country with their sacrifice of themselves and of their service, and now give back to their communities.
Herb, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. It's an absolute pleasure to hear your story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate what you're doing.
Well, what a beautiful life. Who reffed the beautiful game, and what a great day. We're going to go ahead and sign off from the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum. Operation Insight is brought to you by the Mid-America Veterans Museum. Do you like our podcast? With your support, we'll continue to bring you great programming. If you'd like to donate, go to mavm.org and click on Donate.